Tonight, Batwoman takes a break for the life and times of Killer Croc. Red Hood and the Outlaws is actually becoming quite readable, believe it or not. And Green Lantern New Guardians gives Kyle his greatest power yet. Consent. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 94 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and there's only 10 comics this week. You know, I'm realizing now that for 94 episodes I've pretty much opened up every one of them with there's only this many comics, or can you believe there's this many comics? And I have to imagine that for anyone who's actually managed to stick with me for a while, it's gotten pretty old. So screw that. I'm not going to talk about the number of comics. I'm going to come up with something more original. So rewind it back to start. Here we go. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 94 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and how about that weather? Yeah, right. All right, let's talk about comics. So, like I said, 10 of them, and the ones coming out this week are all the 21st issues of Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Birds of Prey, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League of America's Vibe, Wonder Woman, Legion of Superheroes, and Animal Man. Sorry for the pause there, but I realized that Justice League of America's Vibe is actually issue number 5, not issue number 21. Can you imagine if that series got 21 issues? Justice League of America's Vibe? Oh, God. They would have run out of plot so quickly. There would be nothing to do. It would just be the Flash TV show, season 7, all over again. Anyway, that's all of them, but really, I could sit here and talk for as long as I wanted because there is no way I'm going to be filling my hour and 45-minute target time because there's just not enough books to do it. So I won't be doing that to you. Let's get into the books. Batman and Robin number 21, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason and Cliff Richards. So this issue is bargaining because we're going through all the stages of grief, and this is Batgirl's issue. And the only thing that you need to know about Batgirl is that she has just had a showdown with her insane brother and feels that she may have betrayed the symbol of the bat, so therefore she's having a rough time. So this one picks up with Batgirl down by the docks beating up a bunch of like heroin importers or something like that. And she has the bat symbol off of her chest. She's still wearing the rest of the costume, but she's not wearing the bat symbol. And she's like, you know, this is a big enough job. I thought I would run into him. And then all of a sudden Batman shows up and she's fighting alongside him, but she's like, okay, just say something. Say anything. Just talk about like death of the family, or the stuff going on in your own book, or like how Damien died. Literally anything. Just say something to the man. And she's like, also, how am I going to explain that I'm not wearing the bat symbol anymore? Like, I need him to approve of me. I need just that tiny little bit of approval. And then as the fight is wrapping up, he basically starts the conversation like, so you're not wearing your bat symbol. Guess it's official. Bye. And then just leaves. And she's like, oh, all right. Yeah, that's bye. So then we get a sequence of Batgirl standing outside of her dad's window as he's like disassembling and reassembling his gun. And she's basically explaining to the audience everything that I just explained to you of, oh, Dad, you did so much for me, but now you're hunting Batgirl because she killed your son, and I don't know if I'm worthy of even being your daughter anymore, let alone Batgirl, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And she says, like, I may not deserve your forgiveness, but I'm sure as hell going to need it someday. And then leaves. And mind you, he can't hear any of this. It's all just, she's there talking to herself. So then we go to a car dealership, I guess, where some guys break in a giant Humvee and they start taking hostages. And we see Like, before they even do anything, Batman is already there, ready to take him out. And he's, like, throwing batarangs into people's arms. Like, he is brutal today. And so Batgirl calls up Alfred, says, hey, I just ran into Batman. Didn't really get to talk as much as I wanted to. Could you find him for me? And Alfred's like, nope, he is off the grid and he will not talk to me. So good luck finding him. But then she stumbles across the same car dealership and was like, okay, I see where he's been. He's been here because he's already done. He's taken care of everything. So he flies off. And then we see at a 7-Eleven, there's a hostage situation and guys calling in like, oh, I've got like a dozen hostages here and I want 500 grand for each one. And I want a plane and I want all this stuff. And Bullock's there just saying like, geez, anybody got a shot? What are we going to do? And of course, Batman is just already inside and he is not attacking them immediately. He looks at them and he says, look, you've got hostages here. Trade them for me. If you do that, like, Gotham will pay for their number one vigilante. Like, you got a better deal out of it. And all the gunmen are like, that sounds pretty good. Except for the leader who's like, screw that guy, shoot him. So they're all about to shoot Batman, but of course he unloads and just beats the ever-loving crap out of them, gets the hostages free, and Batgirl arrives and starts recording the entire fight where he's being extremely brutal to the point where Bullock steps up and says, hey, maybe you want to cool it a little bit, Batman, and like grabs him by the arm, and Batman just flips him over and says, don't you ever touch me, Bullock. So we see Batman driving back into the Batcave. Batgirl is waiting for him in there, and she's like, hey, Bruce, you've got some issues going on. Like, trust me, I know issues. And he's like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? And then on all the screens, she pulls up the videos that she recorded tonight. And Batman gets pissed. Like, how dare you record me snapping that man's arm for no reason? And we get the bargain here was him about to trade his own life for the hostages. And Batgirl's like, you can't just keep bargaining your life in order to try to get something back for Damian. And he's just like, no, that's not what I'm doing here. Like, I was supposed to protect Damian. I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to save him, and I didn't. So that's all this is yeah, I'm feeling guilty about that. Screw you for thinking that's wrong. And she's like, no, like, you're taking it too far. And she points over to the little uniform case for Damian. And he's just like, look, you don't get to talk about the uniform. You took off your bat. Like, you're no longer a part of the family because of your own choices here. Like, what do you want to say? And so she smashes open the uniform case and says, like, look, if you need me to wear it, if you need a Robin that badly, I'll do it. Like, I'm here to do whatever it takes to get you back to the way you were before. And he just says, like, I'm not the one who needs saving. Damian was, and I failed him. And he sends her out, and he's left looking at all the shattered glass from the broken uniform stand. And that's it. That's where it leaves off. I thought Easy was going to end with a little, like, Two-Face thing, because it's been doing that for a while, but guess not. Honestly, when I was thinking about it, bargaining has always been the weird one in terms of the stages of grief for me, in that it's very hard to pin down exactly, like, what does it mean? And that carries over here, where it feels weird to me that the bargaining issue is Batman, like, trying to trade his life, but not for Damian, just, like, for Damian's memory. If that's what it means, then I guess I just never had a really good grasp on it. I don't know. It just kind of felt like more of the rage issue, more of the last one, where he was angry and he was just beating the crap out of people for no reason. I don't really see it being the bargain. That being said, I do like the little tie-in here for Batgirl, because obviously she's going through a lot of crap in her book, and I like that they could just be like, no, we're gonna mention that. We're gonna say, hey, this has been going on. It just gives that little continuity between books. So overall, I mean, it wasn't great. There were a few little moments in there, but I think I got to give this one like a 6.5. It's fine. It's above average, but it's not an amazing issue. It's not something that I feel is actually exploring Bruce's grief. It's more so just doing lip service for an issue and focusing more on Batgirl than Batman. Batwoman number 21, written by J.H. Williams III and W. Haden Blackman, art by Francesco Francavilla. So this is an interlude issue. It is following Killer Croc and what happened to him after he turned into a literal Hydra at the end of the last arc. So we open up with Croc being basically, they beat Medusa, they took care of the Mother of Monsters and all that, and Croc was essentially de-transformed. And we see as he was coming down, I guess you would say, he was hearing the voice of Medusa in his head calling him, saying, Waylon, Waylon. And then slowly that faded away, and all he heard was just like the screaming and the emptiness of Gotham and all the mayhem that he caused. And he was so out of it. He was completely broken. And by the way, all this is told in first-person narration, like he's describing his own feelings. So take that for what you will. But he was so broken that he was just like, I was kind of proud for a moment that, like, yeah, this is it. I took down Gotham, more or less. But, like, I just hurt a lot. So I'm just going to lay here, and if they want to lock me away, so be it, because I literally cannot move. So at that point, he passes out, and he's picked up by a group of people, and he is taken somewhere. It's never specifically said where, but we see that these people are not normal, average people. And then we see all of this was being described to a lizard woman. Her name is Claire, and she, I guess I'll just jump to the reveal. He was brought in by a group of werebeasts that apparently have been featured in Batwoman for a while now, because their leader was the werewolf guy who, like, sacrificed himself during the fight. So they picked up Killer Croc, and he fell for a woman named Claire, who also has, like, lizardy bits, and they are in love. Like, it's not like a joke or anything like that. It's not her trying to get him to do something. They're in love. So he's like, oh man, I've never been with such a pretty woman before. And yeah, she's got like lizard stuff, but that's actually what does it for me. So we see him walking down the hallways of this place. It's a huge, like, underground chapel, more or less, I guess. It's like a cult of werebeasts. And he comes across a librarian guy named Jared. And he's like, oh, hey, Waylon, still can't sleep? I think something might be up with your mind. And he's like, nope, definitely not all crazy because of the Hydra stuff. Not at all. I'm all good. Anyway, what's going on? Like, tell me more about this werebeast stuff. And Jared explains, mostly for the sake of the audience, that every human being came from some bloodline that way back was an animal or whatever. Some people still have little traits like that. He specifically says something like feral eyes or an acute sense of smell. And then Croc says kind of like cobblepot. So I guess penguin is really actually part bird, according to this. But then other people are even further deep into their animal connections, and they're able to transform into their animal lineage. And this guy transforms into like an eagle. And Waylon points out, like, I'm not a shapeshifter. I can't transform. I'm just kind of stuck as scaly and big. And he's like, but have you not been transforming from the young scared boy into Killer Croc into the Hydra? You've undergone all these transformations. And Croc's like, that's not what I meant. You know it. So at that point, the rest of the cult comes in and they say, hey, here's the thing. You are the great beast of Babylon. You are our Messiah. We want you to lead our little group as king. And they hand him this ceremonial sword, and he's like, cool, what's the catch? And they say, the catch is Batwoman murdered our previous leader, Kyle Abbott, werewolf guy. You got to kill Batwoman. And he's like, okay. So at that point, apparently one of the guys says that Maggie Sawyer smells a lot like Batwoman, because, they spend so much time together. But he doesn't know that, so he's like, I'm just going to go stake her out until I see her either A, transform into Batwoman, or B, show Batwoman, or see Batwoman show up. So he sits around for a while. Maggie's just overlooking Gotham at her car. Batwoman comes riding up on a motorcycle, And then she goes and gives Maggie a kiss. And Croc's like, all right, didn't see that one coming, but no time like the present. So he jumps out of the bushes and he's like, my thought process here was I would jump after Batwoman and she'd be so busy defending Maggie that it would be easy to like get one on her. However, Maggie then unloaded an entire pistol into Croc, so she's clearly able to fight for herself, and Croc has to be like, psh, I don't feel a thing. Meanwhile, his narration's like, ow, that hurts so much. So at that point, Batwoman gets the wind knocked out of her. Croc is like, I was supposed to take you back to the church to kill you, but I might just bleed you out here. And then Maggie reaches into the cop car that she's on, pulls out a shotgun and says, Waylon Jones, you're under arrest. Boom. And as she gets a shot to the neck, Batwoman gets away. She's able to catch her breath. We see the blood coming out is taking the form of the Hydra again. So, like, he's kind of not okay and trying to transform back into the Hydra. And then he says, I hear it again, a woman's voice saying my name. And he thinks it's one of these women, but they're just like, duh, we're not, why would we be saying Waylon? Like, no, that's not us. You're losing your mind. And he realizes, oh, wait, no, that wasn't a woman's voice. It was me. It was my own voice from when I was 10 years old before I killed anybody. So anyway, at that point, just to get through the rest of this, Batwoman says, all right, you're clearly crazy. I'm going to send you back to Arkham with a broken back if you keep on coming at me. Otherwise, I'll just take you back as is. And then Firebird or Flamebird comes in and says like, oh, and he'll have third-degree burns. So Waylon's like, all right, I could fight all three of these, but I would immediately be making an enemy of myself with these people, and therefore the cult of the Werebeast would not be safe. Therefore, I'm out. So he immediately runs out into the swamp and back to his Werebeast friends. And we get a little flashback here of when he was chased through the swamp by like some bully from high school, who then proceeds to like say that he's going to skin him and see how deep his crocodile skin goes, to which Waylon turns around and just kills him by like chewing through his neck. So at that point, the cult shows up and says like, did you do it? Did you kill Batwoman? And they're like, no, I didn't. It didn't work out and we're not going to do it again. And the Werebeast guy is like, but you had to in order to be our king. This is very important. You needed to. And then Croc just sticks the sword in the guy saying like, you're going to get us all killed, man. Look, if I'm going to be king, rule number one, we got to get the hell out of Gotham. It is not safe here. There are too many superheroes. We got to go. And he takes Claire, and Claire's like, all right, yeah, fair enough. I know a place. It's where I grew up. And the last panel, it seems like Claire is pregnant, because Waylon is rubbing her lower stomach and like, yeah. Anyway, it was a fine issue. I mean, obviously, it's its own little intermission. It's not something that's going to be connected to the plot as a whole. It's just a thing of, all right, where's Croc going? What's he doing? How's that working out? It's fine in that regard. I would say that the art is good. I enjoy it, but it's so very different from what we've been getting. It was kind of a shock to the senses. So it stood out a lot when I was reading it in trade. Overall, it's like a 7. It's good. That's the thing, is it's not a great book. It's not blowing me away, but it didn't do anything wrong, and it was a decent enough read. I'm glad that we got into the mind of Croc. So yeah, 7 seems fair to me. Birds of Prey number 21, written by Christy, Marx, art by Romano, Molenaar, and Scott McDaniel. So last issue, Starling betrayed the team, but that barely matters at all because the ending cliffhanger was a Talon showed up to attack Strix. And the Talon was Calvin Rose from the book Talon, which also ended in a cliffhanger of this exact same point. Issue number 8. So we pick up with the Talon jumping in and attacking Strix, who's kind of slow because of, all the stuff that went on last issue. And Batgirl is like, Oh, great, cool, another Talon. Glad I have to deal with this. However, he's not stealthy, like at all. Like, I saw him jumping in, and he's barely putting up a fight at all. He's holding back for some reason. What's going on? But then he manages to jump over Batgirl, tie her up with her own cape, and then push her down some stairs, and then close the door behind. And that's enough to get her away. That was the whole goal. Just get her away from Strix, because Calvin then says, Mary Turner, I'm your executioner. Court of Owls sends you to die. And he's like, I'm sorry about this, but I got to do it. And they, of course, Strix just pushes both of them off the top of this multi-story building to the ground below. We then get Condor and Black Canary, who are pulling out some hard drives from the Court of Owls computers. And Black Canary is she's spending like 2 full pages just like, how could Starling betray me? I thought we were friends. And Condor says, yeah, I've been betrayed too. It sucks, but you will get over it. So moving on, Batgirl gets on the comms and says, hey, a Talon just attacked Strix. I can't get up on the roof because he like sealed the door shut. I need some help up here. So Condor points out, they never send Talons alone, so odds are there are other ones. Keep an eye out. So anyway, we see that the 2 Talons have crashed down onto the ground. Strix gets up first, sees Calvin still dead, more or less, and pulls out her sword, is about to chop off his head, and then thinks, nah, and leaves. And then Calvin comes to and just be like, okay, she knew that wasn't going to kill us, but she also could have killed me, but she didn't. Anyway, I can't think about that. I have to kill her because they are torturing my girlfriend and her kid. So at that point, Batgirl and them break out of the door off top. They look around, can't see anybody. Condor goes out flying, doesn't see any sign of them anywhere. And they're like, okay, that means they must be somewhere here in the building. So start searching the floors. I'll start at the top and work down. You guys work at the bottom, come up. So we see they are somewhere in the building. They're having a sword fight with each other. And Calvin's remarking of like, yeah, no, she's good, but she is slow. Like, this seems like she would normally be able to vest me, but she is slightly slower right now, which is giving me the upper hand. And I kind of just need to take it. So he punches her in the back of the head, and they continue fighting for a little bit. We see Batgirl is making her way through the building and hears like rustling noises, so she busts into a room which is just full to the brim of rats. And then she's like, dang, that wasn't them. And then we get this page. Okay, so Condor and Black Canary are searching from the ground up, and Black Canary basically asks, Condor, why are you still here? Like, what's keeping you around with us? In Japan, you seemed like you didn't want any part of us, but then you followed us to America, and now you're like working hand in hand. What's going on here? And Condor calls Black Canary Dinah, which he's apparently not supposed to know that information. And he says, Dinah, I know what you think you did, but you're not a killer, and you need to understand that. And he takes off his mask and says, my name is Ben, and I'm totally into you. And so they make out for a second, then they hear a banging noise, and it's like, oh yeah, right, there's a story going on. So, just to be clear, that's happening. It's kind of been hinted at in prior issues, but I didn't think they would just trauma bond that quickly. So either way, they bust through a wall, Strix and Calvin, and Calvin does get the upper hand enough to basically knock her down and pull off part of her mask. And she's like, oh, now I have to do it in order to save my girlfriend and her child. And he sees her scarred skin under the mask and just like, you've been tortured like I was. We're not so different, you and I. Oh, I can't do it. I can't kill you. And so he collapsed to the ground, and it looks like Strix immediately gets up and is about to kill him, and he apologizes to Casey and Sarah, I think her name is? Yeah, Sarah. And it's just like, I'm sorry, I failed you. And Strix hears this and says, who? Why did you say those names? And when I say says that, she wrote it on the ground. And Calvin explains like, oh, well, the Court of Owls sent me. They want me to get your costume and also a piece of your blood. I have this toxin here that's going to completely disintegrate you and make it so you can't revive. But I just can't do it. I don't want to be a cold-blooded killer. And Strix is like, you talk too much. Follow me. And so he follows after her and says, like, well, I don't know if I can trust her, but I'm going to have to in order to save us both. That's the issue. It felt like this all could have been done in like 3 pages. I guess my biggest problem with it is the whole Batgirl, Black Canary, and Condor searching for them thing. Like, they're not stealthy. If this was a spy thing where, like, they were both behind cover and, like, trying to attack each other, I could get that subplot. But, like, they were crashing through walls. And you're telling me that these, like, superheroes with all this tech had no way to be able to tell, like, oh, yeah, they're busting down the foundational pillars on the 2nd floor. Like, I don't know. It seemed like a weird little subplot. And I understand this is Birds of Prey and not 2 Talons fighting each other, but I feel like that should have been the main focus of the issue. And instead it kind of felt like shafted off to the side, I guess. I don't know what... I guess I'm more upset by what I was hoping from the fight rather than what I actually got from it. Because in the end, it wasn't really much of a fight. This is the first time that we've gotten Strix into a thing where there is someone who can, like, totally be her equal, and we just kind of... Who cared it? You know, it just didn't matter in the end. So, overall, I'll give this one... I can't say a 7, so I'm giving it a 6.5. It's okay. It's not awful. And I do like the book that it's crossing over with. I do think Talon is a very solid book, but it didn't carry over here. It just did. I think it spent too much time explaining for people who weren't reading Talon rather than just taking the story where it needed to go. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 21, written by James Tynion IV, art by Julius Gopez. So last issue was actually the annual where Jason just left. He's like, I don't have my memory anymore, therefore I am sickened by how much of a killer I am, therefore peace. And so he's off doing his own thing. And this book opens on Roy kind of just whining about that for like 4 pages. And it's you know, him talking, he's like expressing his inner emotions and stuff like that. He's like, oh, you know, I really just want the 3 of us to all be together, and Jason running off, like it really hurts. It's something deep down. And we see that the person he's talking to is Hugo Strange, who is his therapist, and he's explaining all this stuff, and he's just like, yeah, like it's really bothering me, and it seems like, you know, there's like just a god who's just toying with me, who's just saying like, yeah, let's ruin how this one guy's life is going just over and over and over again. And Hugo's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Tell me more about the girl, the alien girl. And he's like, oh yeah, Starfire. She was lying to me too. She was like saying how she doesn't really remember people, and if I leave, she wouldn't like remember me. But it turns out she remembers people just fine. So what's that about? And Hugo stands up and he's like, here's the thing, Roy. You've always been really trusting for people who probably don't deserve it. And that leaves you vulnerable. And that vulnerability has been taken advantage of by these so-called friends. And in the next room, Starfire's just like waiting, and she can hear all this. And he's just like, oh, shut up, you piece of crap. And then she looks out the window and sees Essence. And so she busts outside, burns away the like clothes she was wearing, and grabs Essence by the throat and is just like, why is the all cast doing this? Can you see how it is tearing apart that man? And Essence is like, I wasn't a part. I just found this out same time as you. This is just crazy to me. But what I can tell you, though, is that Hugo Strange sold you out. He wants the bounty that's on all of your heads, and he sold you out to assassins, and they are no joke. So good luck with that. And then she just disappears. So then we see what Jason's up to, and Jason is in the Pacific Northwest. He is still wearing his Red Hood, like mask, hood, helmet thing, despite the fact he didn't want to be that. And he is being attacked by a group of assassins. The main one here, not the main one, but the first one is Rictus, who he's like, Jason, you're riding a normal-ass motorcycle. That's weird considering all the things I taught you. And Jason's like, I have no idea what. And then Lady Shiva and Cheshire show up, and they're like, hey, Lady Shiva, you also trained Jason. Why isn't he fighting back? And Jason's like, seriously, guys, I am no idea what's going on here. Please stop attacking me. At that point, Hugo still is like breaking down Roy. He's like, Roy, you gotta listen to me. You're weak. You're pathetic. You're just going to keep on getting hurt over and over again. You have to cut off those friends. Be alone because you're weak. Once again. And then Starfire busts in and she's like, that's not true. You're the strongest man I've ever met. Also, that guy sold us out. Essence said so. And Roy's like, why would my therapist sell us out? That seems weird. You wouldn't do that, right, Hugo? And Hugo's like, I don't know what she's talking. She's a bad influence. And then at that point, a bunch of smoke clouds start appearing in Hugo's office, and out from them come the Untitled. You thought we were done with this, didn't you? No. So the Untitled show up, and Hugo is like freaking out. He's like, oh God, what's going on? Why are these people appearing in my office? So then we cut back over to Red Hood, and they're talking about, like, the assassins are talking about some, like, oh, maybe he's not ready. Maybe we should reconsider our offer or something like that. And Jason's like, I don't want whatever you're selling. Please go away. And he throws the hood, the helmet at them, and then shoots it, and it explodes enough for him to kind of get away. And then he's attacked by a telekinetic. I don't know specifically the powers, but their name is December Greystone, who used to go by the name of Blood Mage, and they're just throwing Jason up and down in the air with invisible puppet strings. And a voice says, like, all right, let him down. He doesn't remember anything. And it turns out it's Bronze Tiger, who, once again, as I said in the annual issue, is an actual tiger. Like, he is an anthropomorphized tiger. It's not how I remember him. But regardless, he shows up here and he's just like, hey, you used to call me Ben. We used to be friends. Anyway, December, teleport us home. And December says the line, home again, jiggity jig. And that teleports that. It's not important to the story, but you had to know that. So either way, they teleport into this place called Eth-Alth-Ebon, which is the sacred city of the League of Assassins, and where Jason's new life will begin. So anyway, back with Hugo and the team, Roy's basically chewing him out, being like, you called the Untitled? They're super evil. And Hugo's like, I still don't know what's going on. And he just runs out of the room. And then we see the leader of the Untitled, whose name is Drakkar, says like, okay, here's the thing, guys. We could totally be killing you right now, but we don't want to. We want to make a deal with you. And it's like, okay, what's the deal? And it's like, all right. The League of Assassins is going to attack us. That is a thing that's going to happen. We want to get at them first. However, their sacred city of Eth-Alth-Ebon is totally protected. Like, we can't get past it. So we need you to go there, break a few locks, and then just let us in. Also, Jason is being held in that city. So double whammy for you. You get Jason back, and we get to kill the League of Assassins. If you do this, you'll never hear from us again. And Starfire's like, no, you guys are clearly super evil. But then Roy's like, okay, but hear him out. We could get the band back together. We should, like, let's give it a shot. Let's. Yeah, I mean, if he betrays us, we just kill him then. But, like, let's just see how far we can go with this. So at that point, Starfire's like, no. It's a stupid, like, I'm out. I'm not going to do that. And he's just like, oh, yeah, you're going to leave too. Everyone just leave Roy. Is that what we're doing today? And she's like, if you're being an idiot, yes. And you were very much being an idiot. So she gives him a little kiss and then says, all right, well, give me a call if it manages to work out. But I don't think it's going to work out. So bye. So at that point, he turns back to Drakkar and says, give me all your guns and weapons. And I need them now. And then we get one last shot back here at the city of League of Assassins, and Bronze Tiger transforms back into a normal person because apparently it's a talisman that eats away at his soul. So I wonder why he would even do it for such a long stretch of time when they're not fighting. But regardless, he walks Jason in and he says, you know, I'm kind of jealous of you. You don't remember the first time you saw this place. And we see this beautiful cave city with a giant statue of Ra's al Ghul in the middle. And it's like, this is what Ra's al Ghul was trying to bring to the masses. This is his vision. Isn't it beautiful? And he says, anyway, the Untitled are coming for us. We know this is happening. So we just need you to We need you to lead us. And Jason's like, excuse me, you need me to what? He's like, oh yeah, you're our leader now. You're the leader of the League of Assassins. Good luck with that. So, yeah, that's the issue. I like it. I know I gave it a hard time. The first half is kind of whatever. I didn't need the whole Hugo Strange psychotherapy plot. Like, it felt unnecessary to me. If we're going to set it up for something later, I'm a bit more intrigued, but it felt like it was kind of thrown away already, so whatever. That being said, I really like how we're doing League of Assassins versus the Untitled, because I thought once Scott Lobdell left this book, James Tynion was just going to throw off all of the shackles that were placed before him. But no, he's working with it. The same way that he wiped Jason's memory. He used things that were already part of the story, and he used them to tell an interesting tale. This feels like the setup to that. The League of Assassins versus the Untitled, which we already know is this ancient order of killers and monsters. So I'm down. It's an interesting idea, and we've got Jason and Roy on the two different sides of it. It's good. It's good setup. I'm looking forward to it. And that is the only time I have ever said that about this book. So it means something. In terms of ratings, art's okay. It's not my favorite style. It's a bit too inky for me, but I know some people like that. I'd say it's like a 7.5. It's a good issue. It's not, we can easily not stick the landing. It might even trip at the first step here, but the setup is something that's working for me. It's a good premise, and I want to see how it goes. Supergirl number 21, written by Michael Allen Nelson, art by Diogenes Neves. So this is pretty much the start of a new arc, or at least it feels like it. Start of a new trade at the very least. So we open up with Supergirl in media res. She's flying through space on a space bike, and Dr. Veritas calls her up being like, Supergirl, where are you? Next treatment's ready. And Supergirl starts hearing all these cries for help, and she's like, can't really talk right now. And Veritas is like, did you steal my space bike? And she's like I said, can't really talk right now. So she shuts off the comms, and she sees this huge city floating in space being utterly destroyed. But we cut back to 2 days ago in New York, where Supergirl goes and visits Shaban, aka Silver Banshee, and she is currently trying to fix some plumbing that is causing literal sewage to fill up in her apartment. And Supergirl shows up being like, hey, hi, I wanted to say thank you for being a good friend, and then goodbye. And Shaban's like, okay, what's this about? Why are you showing up here? Are you speaking English now? And you just show up and you say goodbye? Like, what's going on? And she's just like, Earth sucks, man. I had hell on Earth, like literally, and then I got kryptonite poisoning, and people keep attacking me, and I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to go back into space. And Shaban's just like, oh, wow, everyone's got their own crap. Like, did you forget that I have an ancient, evil entity in me of the Silver Banshee that I am constantly terrified about? And Supergirl's like, that's not the same thing. That's different. And he's just like, either way, people deal with their problems. They don't run away from them. You have to deal with this stuff. Don't just leave as soon as things get tough. And she's like, you don't get it. And as she's trying to tell Shaban that she is apparently dying because of the kryptonite thing, Shaban just brushes off, just being like, nope, I don't want to hear it. If you want to whine and complain some more, do it to someone else. If you're just going to leave, then leave. Who cares? So at that point, she sees Supergirl flying off, just be like, all right, yeah, now I feel bad. I was a jerk. And then we cut to the literally now, when the whole space bike thing is happening. And we see somebody's viewing Supergirl on the monitors, and it's this horrible, grotesque-looking plant monster. And he's just like, hey, Master, will you be going out to read Supergirl? And he's like, nah, she's not ready to see my form yet, but you can go. Just make sure you transform into something more humanoid and approachable. And so he does transform. And the guy's name is Delacour. I will forget that. And he's just like, all right, well, hold on. First, we need to see what kind of hero she really is. We got to get a feel for her. So let's send in that monster that was attacking a while back. And so he presses a few buttons, and Supergirl lands in the city and sees all of this mayhem and destruction going on, and there's a language she doesn't speak, but people are like clearly crying it out, and she's just like, what's going on? Someone tell me what's going on. They're like, ah, la, 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 la. And he's like, I don't know what that means. But then she looks up and sees a building about to crash down on him, and she's like, oh, okay, now got it, let's do that. So she pushes the building back, but it weighs like really, really more than it should. It is significantly heavier than it looks. She's like, Jesus Christ, what are you guys making these buildings out of? This is insane. Anyway, do you guys get that I'm saving you? I'm not trying to hurt you or anything, but this massively heavy building. And so she sets down the building gently, and she's like, all right, I don't know what's going on. I don't sense any earthquakes or anything. What's happening around here? And as the rubble clears out, she sees this giant, like, mechanical-looking monster attacking. And she's like, okay, giant mechanical monster, I want to try this new thing called not punching you in the face. So let's just have a nice little chat and see if we can't resolve these differences. And the monster punches her in the face. She goes through several buildings, and she's like, okay, now I'm going to punch you in the face. And we see the people looking on are just like, oh, maybe we should have gone with something easier. It doesn't seem like Supergirl's going to be around with this. So then Supergirl throws a punch at the guy. It barely does anything because he's also significantly tougher than expected. And then Supergirl gets eaten by the monster, to which she then does a supernova blast thing, and the monster explodes. And it explodes into a bunch of tiny little pieces of shrapnel that Supergirl doesn't recognize, but they are also, like, extremely heavy. And she's like, okay, is everything here made out of this, like, really heavy rock? So all the people start gathering up around her, and they're just like, okay, hey, guys, sorry, I didn't mean to destroy your monster, if that's what you're thinking. But then the people start, like, cheering her, and they're like, yeah, you saved us, hooray, all in their language, of course. And she's like, oh, this is new, I like this, people are appreciating me. So at that point, Delacour's like, sir, everyone's praising her, doesn't that seem a bit suspicious? And the voice is like, no, this is perfect. She's never gotten praise before. She's going to love it here. Anyway, can you look more like, I don't know, a kindly old man? I feel like she's going to trust that a lot more. He's like, fair enough. Transforms into an old man, and then it's like, all right, give her the welcome wagon. So Delacour goes down and is like, hi, do you speak Kryptonian? She's like, yes, I do. Your Kryptonian's not very good. And he's like, fair enough. How about English? Yep, cool, let's speak in English. So Delacour says, like, yeah, that thing was a Crix. Don't worry about it. Let me tell you about our planet, Inoxia, our little town. And he, like, grabs her by the arm, and it's, like, very welcoming, very much like, yes, no, this was, like, wonderful that you saved our place. Anyway, Inoxia, let's tell you about it. And he points out to the landscape that has been destroyed, and it's already self-healing itself, and be like, everything in Inoxia is able to change and be created and, like, fix itself. And she's like, that's cool. And then he says, we also base all of our stuff off of memory. So we're able to recreate any lost civilizations based solely off of memory. And she's like, I came from Krypton, right? And he's like, yeah, I do. Anyway, come take a walk with me. So they make their way down this hall of, like, relics and stuff like that, and Supergirl recognizes the head of a statue called the Taming of Dremonicus, and she's like, oh yeah, no, it was this famous statue on Krypton, and, like, I thought it would have been lost forever. And he's just like, yeah, no, it is lost forever, like, this is all we have, but because of our technology, I want you to describe that statue. Tell me how it looked. Tell me how you remember it. And she's very vague. She's like, oh yeah, what was the guy? Val Rowe was the woman who attacked the Dremonicus, and she had this beautiful flowing cape, and Dremonicus looked so angry. And just from a few words, he's just like, all right, I get it. I know exactly how it looks. And their technology perfectly recreates this statue. And she's like, oh my God, it's exactly as I am, and that's Val Rowe, except she's wearing my crest for my family instead of her own. And be like, well, it's based off your memories, so maybe your memory is, a little bit fuzzy there. And then Delacour's like, but here's the thing. It's not just the buildings. It's the people, too. I can look like Val Rowe. And so he transforms into a Kryptonian woman and makes the Dremonicus, like this lion beast, out of tech. And it's like, oh my God, it's warm. It has actual fur. It's purring. What the hell is this? And then Kara goes up and, like, pokes at Delacour's face, being like, are you real? It's like, yes, I am. Please stop poking my face. And so Supergirl's like, cool. So, like, can we make all of Krypton again? Can you like do that for me? And he's like, okay, but, like, I need more in order to get an entire culture. I can do a little statue because you remember that, but a culture is a lot more complicated. So no, we can't do Krypton, but like it's we could if we had more info. And Kara's like, so you're saying there's a chance. You're saying it's possible. And then that mystery voice from the beginning says, anything is possible, Kara Zor-El, but you must ask yourself, what are you willing to make it happen? And we see that the mystery voice, I mean, I'm just going to skip the gun. It's Cyborg Superman. It is quite literally Superman, House of El, crest and everything, and he's got a bunch of robotic parts. So, Cyborg Superman's here. Because, yep, that's what we needed. I like it. I think it's an interesting thing. Supergirl has been very good about feeling like every event follows the last event, where you have all of, the Hell on Earth stuff came from this point of her feeling lonely, and that came from like all this other stuff. It always felt very naturally progressing. Even when we changed writers, it felt like, okay, no, we're making a point here. We're doing this. She just lost her home. She lost Sanctuary in the last arc. So I'm sure she feels very out of place. On top of that, she's got kryptonite poisoning, so she's like viewing her own mortality and stuff. And she just doesn't want to be on Earth anymore. It makes sense she goes out into space, and then we set up this whole story of people who could perfectly recreate her original home. Brilliant. I love it. It's great. As for Cyborg Superman, that could be hit or miss. I want to see how they deal with it. If it's a cool reveal, great. If it's going to be something like, oh yeah, I just happen to look like Superman, then I might call some BS on that. But as for this issue, I'm enjoying it. It did a good job setting it up. It was a lot of just setting up how this technology works, but it was necessary. And I'm happy they just got it out of the way to begin with rather than leaving it up to mystery or whatever. So overall, this is like an 8.5. I really enjoyed this issue. I think it's a good turning point for where this book can go from here. So yeah, 8.5 for Supergirl. Green Lantern New Guardians number 21, written by Justin Jordan, art by Brad Walker. So the end of Jeff Johns' entire saga thing happened, and this book got a reset as well. So we pick up on Oa, where the New Guardians, not the team that this book is about, but the blue people who replaced the other blue people. And they're basically telling Kyle, like, okay, here's the thing. The old Guardians were awful. They thought that they could police the universe while existing, like, outside of it. We want to be a part of it. We want to go out and see the universe so that we can understand it better and therefore make more correct decisions. And so we need a guide. We need someone to help us along. We need a guardian. That's you, Kyle. Kyle, we want you to become our new guardian. And Kyle says no. And they're like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, all right, let me clarify. Hell no. And then he just flies off. And Hal puts up a big stop sign as he's getting away. And just like, okay, hold on, buddy. Like, we can go out, we can fly some more, but let's just talk. And he's like, fine, but I'm going out to find something to hit. And we see that Kyle and Hal get into a battle with some technologically modified space sharks. Yep. So Hal's basically saying, like, okay, so what's going on? Like, why don't you want to help them out? And it's like, okay, first and foremost, there are space sharks. Like, there are other problems here than the things that the Guardians are doing. I'm the White Lantern. I want to go focus on those bigger problems. I don't want to be a chaperone on their little field trip around the universe. And like, there might be a bigger threat out there that we're just not seeing because we're so stuck in our own little petty core drama. And Hal's just like, look, I get it. I understand. It's totally understandable what you're saying there. However, I need to rebuild the core right now. The Green Lantern core over in the book Green Lantern and Green Lantern Core is very much busted up. It needs very small, very dwindled. We need to rebuild it pretty much from scratch. And I don't trust the little blue guys. I need someone that I do trust to keep an eye on them while I'm doing all this. And I think that you are the perfect man for the job. So can you just like think about it? And he's like, yeah, no, I'll think about it. So then cut down to Earth, and Kyle's packing up his apartment. Or maybe unpacking. Honestly, it's a little bit confusing. And I think it's packing. And Carol's there. And she's just like, oh, so you're going to do it? You're going to babysit these Guardians? And it's like, yeah, I didn't think I would, but Hal convinced me. And she's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. And so Kyle asks, hey, what are you and Hal going to be doing now? Like, what's the next step in your lives together? And she's like, well, there really isn't one. We're taking a break. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, Hal didn't say anything about it. It's like, yeah, he didn't say anything about it in his own book either. It was a little weird. And Carol explains, like, I still love him, but in order to love him, I can't be with him, and blah, blah, blah. So at that point, she's like, anyway, enough about that. Where are the Guardians taking you first? And he's like, well, apparently literally the edge of the universe. So they make their way out to a thing called the Anomaly, which looks like a giant, like, cyst floating in the middle of space, and it's surrounded by tons of like science ships that are all trying to analyze it. So Kyle and the Guardians fly in, and the Guardians are like, okay, here's the thing. We don't know what it is. Because Kyle's asking about it. He's like, we don't know what it is. But what we think it is that it is a fragment of the old universe. This universe we're in, not the first one. Not the alpha build. We are in at least version 2, and version 1 is in there. It's not the cyst itself. The like giant bubble of goo, that's a protective layer that the universe itself has put up to protect itself from the old thing inside. We just want to figure out what it is. We want to like, what better thing than figuring out what the anomaly is? And then all of the ships around them start running away. And the Guardians are like, why are they all leaving? Like, I didn't sense any. Did something change? What's going on? And Kyle's like, you idiots. They're not running away because of the anomaly. They're running away because you're here. You and the old Guardians were such a cause for fear in the universe that you being here is enough to get them to turn tail. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we should work on optics a little bit. But first, this big shows up with tusks and an axe. And he says, yeah, they are right to fear you, but I don't fear you, Guardians. My name is Exeter, and I guard the anomaly from anyone who dares come near it. And the Guardians are like, okay, but we want to check it out. Kyle, can you make this man let us check it out? And Kyle's like, he seems big and tough, but maybe we can talk this through. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to let them through. And he's like, on whose authority? On my own authority. No one's touching this giant ball of goo. And then all the Guardians just fly past him anyway, and he's just like, son of a bitch. So he goes to take a swipe at the Guardians. Kyle stops it, and of course they get into a fight. It's a decently well done fight scene, but basically Kyle's just trying to explain, like, you don't trust them. Neither do I. I don't like the fact they're doing this. Can we just do it so you don't kill them? Can we just like come to that understanding? And Exeter's like very much single-minded. He's very much of, no, this is my mission, and because it is my mission, I must do it. And he's like, all right, whatever. So at that point, the anomaly starts cracking, and the Guardians are like, that's not right. What's going on here? And they realize that it's cracking more and more as Kyle uses more and more of his power. So they tell him, like, dude, cut it out. Stop using your power. And he's like, what do you mean? But it's too little too late. And the entire anomaly cracks and then shatters open. And Exeter's like, you idiots, this is why no one's allowed to touch the anomaly. You've killed us all. And out from the anomaly is this huge being with like yellow skin. And he doesn't look familiar, but he's here. And he is apparently going to be the death of them all. Okay. I mean, it's interesting. It's a good enough hook of, yeah, we've unearthed some ancient evil and we'll see what happens there. I'm not opposed to it. I think that the biggest issue I have with it is that it feels so sudden, I guess. Like, I don't have an issue with that if they explain it later on, but like the fact that not only did they introduce this issue, they also introduced that Kyle's ring is somehow linked to it, and it broke open, and there's this guy inside, and also it's from an old universe. It's just a lot. And I think that it would have been maybe better paced over like 2 issues, even 3, but the way they did it is fine. It's not awful. I just kind of, I don't know, I wanted to slow down a little bit. Like we had an entire 2-3 pages with space sharks, and it still felt like more breakneck than it needed to be. The best this issue was in the first 2 pages of "Help us, Kyle Rayner." No, leaves. I got a kick out of that. So overall, I'm going to give this one a flat 7. Most of that's out of optimism. I'm hopeful that this is going to be something cool coming out of it, because it seems like it is. I'm down for this idea of, there was an old universe and a new universe, and that's paralleling how there is a set of old Guardians who were a problem and the new Guardians who are trying to be better. There's some potential for good parallels there, but on this issue on its own, it's okay. Justice League of America's Vibe number 5, written by Sterling Gates, art by Pete Woods. So last issue, Vibe agreed to help Gypsy get back to her home dimension or whatever, and then Waller called out the Suicide Squad to get Vibe. This issue is pretty much just that. So Vibe and Gypsy are running through trying to beat back Argus agents. They corner them at every turn, and collectively they use their powers to confuse or blow back or whatever all the different agents that are coming after them. And Cisco calls up his brother and says like, "Hey, I'm in trouble. You got to help me out here." And he's like, "Okay, meet me at that place that Dad took us whenever we got sad. Don't say it over the phone. Also, ditch anything that they could use to track you that's in your costume. I'll meet you there soon." And so they're on their way there. We see Waller is talking to Agent Gunn, and Gunn's like, "Don't send in the Suicide Squad. Yeah, they're murderers, man. This is just a kid who got confused and is trying to play hero." And Waller's like, "Yeah, a kid with superpowers. I'm sending in Suicide Squad. So fall back and steer clear of those two." So they manage to get away because Argus has fallen back, and Cisco just starts taking apart his costume and getting out all the tech bits that would be able to trace him. But he does keep the mask on, and Gypsy's like, "Why? Like, couldn't that still maybe trace you?" And he's like, no, I took care of that. But like, now they can't see through my lenses. That was the problem before. And she says, "Yeah, okay, I get it. It's so people aren't able to, find your family and use them against you. I wish it was so easy to find my family." And then Vibe asks, "Okay, tell me your backstory. What's going on?" And she explains that her people travel through like dimensions, and their thing is that they trade, however problematic that may be. And her stepmother was ruthless at trading. And one day when they transported over to Earth, the stepmother found out that Gypsy made a trade that was beneficial to the other person more than it was to Gypsy. And so she stranded her here, and everyone left without her. And her father has been trying to get her back ever since, but to no avail. And so Vibe's like, "Oh yeah, it's like a fairy tale sort of thing. Anyway, I think I can use my powers to like sense where your dimension is. Let me just try changing up my vision." And so he concentrates, and he sees just a massive web of portals just completely all over in front of him. And it's just like, okay, my brain's overloading. I'm freaking out here. And she tries to talk him down, just being like, "Look, concentrate on anything. Just don't use your powers." And he's just like, "I can't. Oh, what else should I concentrate on?" And Gypsy leans in and gives him a kiss and says like, "This is just to help you concentrate." And he's like, "Oh, well, that may have done something. Also, hey, my vision's focused and I can see the energy left from your dimension. I can help you out here." And before he's able to do anything, big explosion. They are accosted by the Suicide Squad, which in this case is Deadshot, Harley Quinn, King Shark, and a guy named Crowbar who has a crowbar. No points if you guess who's not making it out. So Vibe and Gypsy, they hold hands and they start running. And because of Vibe's ability to not be seen on most cameras and Gypsy's ability to blend in, it's hard for anyone to even see them. Like, it is not working out. So Deadshot switches through a whole bunch of lenses until finally he gets one where he can see the two of them, and he takes a shot at Gypsy. Vibe freaks out, uses powers to blast back Deadshot and Harley, and then King Shark goes for Gypsy and is about to eat her, and as Vibe is coming after her, Crowbar hops in and says, "Hey, I've got an energy-absorbing crowbar. You can't do anything because you're stupid, because you're Vibe." And so he keeps on blasting energy at Crowbar, and Crowbar keeps on absorbing it until finally he blasts so much energy, and Gypsy's just about to get eaten, that the Crowbar overwhelms with energy and seemingly destroys Crowbar, more than likely teleporting him to some other dimension. So at that point, Deadshot's like, "Dude, what did you do with Crowbar?" And it's like, "I don't know, it just disappeared." So they call into Waller to say, like, "Hey, Crowbar might have died, but we got Vibe." And it's like, "All right, what about Gypsy? She's the more important one. Also, who cares about Crowbar?" And King Shark steps up being like, "I don't know, she disappeared during the explosion. Anyway, I'm just going to grab Vibe here and carry him back." And Harley's like, "Wait a minute, you don't smell fishy enough to be King Shark." She hits him over the head with a hammer, and turns out it was Gypsy just cosplaying as King Shark. So both of them are now captured by the Suicide Squad. We see Dante is at a high school football field, which has a little like shrine in remembrance to his brother Armando, and he sits there waiting all night for Cisco until the sun rises, and he's like, "Dude, are you..." Texting him, he's like, "Are you okay? Are you good? Are you alive? Hello?" No response. Cisco wakes up. He is in a tube in Argus, as is Gypsy again, and he tries blasting his way out, and some tubes and tentacles and other technological stuff come out from the back of his tube and basically just bind him up, so he is unable to move or see or do anything. He's just completely beholden in the tube. And we get this overarching narrative of Waller to Gunn saying like, "Hey, you really stuck up for Vibe back there, and you were trying to disobey direct orders from me. If you ever try that again, you may as well retire, because this guy was a threat, and she was an even bigger threat. So if you ever, and I mean ever, talk back to me again, you're through. Got it?" And Gunn's like, "Fair enough. Apologies, Director Waller." So that's the issue. That's all of it. Downer ending, but, you know, they usually are. So I liked it. I think that it did a good job of setting up this dynamic between Gypsy and Vibe. I think it did a good job of explaining her backstory, however simple it may be. I'm always tired of when the Suicide Squad pops in, especially when in the book itself, the Suicide Squad is going through like a major upheaval in its roster and like everything it's doing. So the fact that here it's the three quote unquote main ones and Crowbar, like, this is the kind of thing that breaks continuity, because there's no point where this could ever make sense, you know? But hey, whatever. It's Waller's always been a focal point in this book, so clearly the Suicide Squad were eventually going to show up. So overall, I'd say this one is I'll give it a flat 7. It was just a fun read, and that's kind of hard to get across, but I did have fun reading it. It was an interesting use of their powers, and just kind of a fun little thing. So I'm going to say 7 for this, and I think we've only got 3 issues left in this book, so we'll see how we manage to wrap it up in the remaining 3 issues. Wonder Woman number 21, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Cliff Chiang. So last issue, Wonder Woman was fighting and won against Artemis, and this issue picks up right where we left off of the Firstborn and Cassandra meeting up with Hera, Lennox, Zola, and the kid, who I think is named Zeke. I think that's it. So at this point, Firstborn is asking Cassandra like, "Hey, this guy ripped out your voice, or the voice of God, her powers or whatever," to Cassandra, pointing to Lennox. And he's like, "Yeah, he's the one. He's a dick. He did it." And also his whole thing is that he's made of stone, which I'm not sure we ever got clarification that that was his whole thing. But apparently that's his whole thing, is that he is pretty solidly through and through made of stone. And Firstborn's like, "I can break stone." So Hera steps up at that point and is like, "Hey, firstborn, I'm your mom. I saved your life. Like, isn't that worth something?" And he's like, "Yeah, some life I've had, mom. Thanks for that," and just backhands her. And at this point, Zola starts running away, and Wonder Woman just jumps in and immediately starts fighting against Firstborn. And she gets a few good punches in, but then Cassandra gives chase to Zola and gives the whole breakdown of how her powers work, that basically she can just command people to do things and they do it. And it started when she was a kid and like she was super pissed off at an overbearing mother and she just said drop dead, and then she dropped dead. So that's how she found out she had powers. And she's attacking Zola and all that, and he's just like, wait a minute, hold on, Zola, I want to make sure you understand this here. I am not trying to take your baby to like corrupt it or turn it into something like me. No, that's not at all what's going on. I'm going to use your baby to end the world. That's all I'm here for. Like, just totally wipe the slate clean. So we see Lennox has joined the fight between Wonder Woman and Firstborn. He gets a pretty hefty smackdown immediately. Like, he's got a lot of cracks in his face now. And they manage to team up enough to put Firstborn down for like a second. But then he gets pissed off. He grabs the both of them and just throws them into the ground. And at that point, Orion shows up through his boom tube. And he tells his little bike, go after the baby. Take care of that. I'm going to stay here and fight Firstborn. And he does a pretty good job. He's pretty much equally matched here with Firstborn. At least it appears so. And as they're fighting, we see that the bike has made its way to where Cassandra and Zola are. And Cassandra, she, when we last saw, was walking up towards the baby and the baby's eyes started glowing. And as the bike gets there, Cassandra's out. And the baby's eyes are closed. So seemingly the baby just knocked out Cassandra, no problem. So Orion, he's fighting against Firstborn. Wonder Woman gets in, throws a punch. There's this whole thing here where she thinks that he's calling her baby, despite the fact that his actual misogynistic nickname is Legs. So that's a thing. But regardless, he's like, okay, is everybody here still alive at the very minimum? Because we got to get out of here. Like, I'm equally matched with that guy, or at least that's what I'll say, but we ain't taking him out. So let's all hop on my bike and get the hell out of here. So everyone hops on, meaning, the whole gang, more or less. And they go through a boom tube, and the Firstborn, not wanting them to get away, grabs onto the, entry hole of the boom tube and holds it open, and he's like, I am not letting you leave. Face me, you cowards. And Orion's like, okay, that ain't good. I have never met anyone who's been able to hold open the entrance of a boom tube. And apparently the way the boom tubes work is that you can only exit once the entrance has closed. And if he's holding it open, the power or whatever is rupturing and blah blah. It's bad news, and they're all gonna die. And Lennox, he just turns to the baby, says, well, we had a good run. Don't forget your old brother, half-brother. And he jumps off into the boom tube, flying back towards Firstborn, throws a very strong punch, and seemingly dies in the resulting explosion. So the rest of them pop out, and they're in what seems to be this high-tech, command center. And we see Orion kneels before Highfather on New Genesis. And Hera's like, where are we? And he's like, it's New Genesis. Here's my question. Who are you? Why are you here? And yeah, that's the issue. A couple things of note. Something that started last issue, or maybe even the issue before, is there's this weird writing style going on where, someone will say something, and then the other person will say something snarky as they're, throwing a punch or whatever. And then a few panels will pass, and then the first person, gets snarky with the snarky line. It just consistently happens here, where it's the Firstborn is oh, I know what you aren't. And then Wonder Woman says, oh, this is who I am. And then they throw some more punches, and then Firstborn is well, this is who I am. And it's that happens 3 times in this issue, and it just has been happening, and it's kind of, once you recognize it, really annoying, but it's not bad writing. It's just kind of formulaic, I guess, is the issue I'm having with it. Secondarily, as an art piece here, Cliff Chiang, when they're going through the boom tube, they've got this weird, like, the 3D glasses, red-blue anaglyph thing going on. Looks fantastic. Really, like, totally different art style than I've ever seen. And it's reminiscent for me of Tom King's Mr. Miracle. And it's really striking, so I really do enjoy that. Beyond that, it's an okay issue. It's a fine. It's very short because it is just an extended fight scene. There's not really much to it. Overall, I gotta say it's like 7 sounds low, but 7.5 sounds too high. So I'm gonna go with a 7. And a lot of that is that it's just, I wanted there to be more, I guess. I understand that we're setting up Firstborn to be this bigger piece of a puzzle and we can't like solve this fight now. But it didn't feel like they were really on the back foot that much in this fight, especially once Orion showed up. Like, I felt they could have, if they all three of them fought together, could have handled it. So, tiny little things like that bring it down to a 7, but overall, still a great issue. Legion of Superheroes number 21, written by Paul Levitz, art by Jeff Johnson. So, last issue, Ultra Boy and Chameleon Lad return to Earth, and they see that Persuader's been there just wrecking everything and killing everybody. And this issue picks up with the crew that were in the spaceship, Brainiac 5 and co. Apparently, the quark relays are working again. They're just like, sure. They're just, oh, hey, yeah, they're working, and we're able to see this hologram of the Persuader taking out everybody, and they're super upset by that, and they're like, all right, well, what are we going to do? Now that the quark relays are going on, what's going on? And Brainiac 5 thinks through for a second, and he's like, okay, there might be a possibility of, like, us being able to go and help before the quark relays fade out again. So they go through hyperspace or whatever. Back to Earth, Persuader is fighting against Chameleon Lad and Ultra Boy. Chameleon Lad turns into a giant, and I say lad, it might be kid, I can't remember. But he's turns into a giant snake, and Persuader just chokes him out. Like, that's the whole fight. And then Ultra Boy's throwing rocks at Persuader. And, by the way, I don't know what Persuader's power set is, but all I'm gathering for this is he's strong and he has a giant axe that's kind of magic. So, take that with what you will. And he's fighting against Ultra Boy. And Ultra Boy's like, the Legion will never give up, we'll never surrender. And Persuader's like, dude, it doesn't matter if you never give up, never surrender. We've killed, like, so many of you. You don't understand. You're not winning this. And he says, well, our leader will come up with a plan. Tynion will come up with a plan. Phantom Girl. And he says, Phantom Girl left. She faded back to her own dimension. She's gone. And Ultra Boy's like, oh, that's a bit disheartening. So at that point, we see back inside the ship, I don't know her name. One of the female Legionnaires is looking after Mon-El inside of, like, the tube full of healing juice. And it's just like, oh, I won't let go of him. Please, there has to be something we can do. And then Chemical Lad shows up and is like, hey, Brainiac told me to come down here and, like, do some biological stuff in the healing tube. And he gets at that. And then this girl goes over to Dream Girl and says, like, hey, do you see any, like, visions of the future where Mon-El is, alive? And she's like, I'm not looking in the future because my boyfriend might be dead. Like, my husband, whatever our relationship was. Everything is grimdark right now. So, last issue we also had, I think it's like Polar Boy or whatever, and then Invisible Kid. They went into a realm of the dead or something, and they see a bunch of dead Legionnaires there, and they're like, okay, well, maybe we made a mistake if we're in the land of the dead. And the dead Legionnaires are just like, oh, you guys can go back whenever you want. Like, there's no big deal there. But know this, if you go back, you may be stuck back here forever. AKA you will die, if that wasn't clear. So we go back to the battlefield, and Persuader's about to attack Ultra Boy, who's super sad about Phantom Girl leaving. And then I think the Legionnaires who were on the ship show up, and they're like, hey, Persuader, get out of here. And they start trying to launch an attack, but Persuader is just too super strong for them all to take on. And he throws down his axe, and a bunch of like earthquakes and stuff happen that disrupt all the Legionnaires. And Brainiac's protecting the ship from the attack, and Cosmic Boy Lad? I don't know. Kid in a purple suit. I really cannot overstate how frustrating it is that this trade removes the little text boxes that say who they are each issue. It is the worst. So at that point, they see the entire city is being destroyed, and Tharok shows up in a hologram, and he's like, haha, Legionnaires, I only let the Quark relays come back in order to get you to come here. Now I'm going to kill y'all. And I've brought along Emerald Empress, and she's just there, and she's like, hi, everybody. So it's 3 of the Fatal 5 against the remaining Legionnaires. There's a little bit of a standoff. What's his name here starts trying to make a crystal cage around Emerald Empress again. And it's like, oh, I put you in an Inertron cage before. I don't know how you got out, but you ain't getting out a second time. And then she just immediately teleports out and just like, yeah, it's something that Tharok can do. He controls digispace, so I can just teleport now. And so he gets blasted. The military shows up and immediately gets destroyed by Emerald Empress. And then we see Tharok, who he's taunting Brainiac 5 because all the other Legionnaires are now inside his little force field bubble. And he's like, dude, you're not making it out of this. Like, I control all of technology. It's too much for you. Even you can't do anything about that. And Brainiac's like, well, the Persuader and the Emerald Empress couldn't get through my impenetrable force field, and neither will you, Tharok. And he's like, click. Hey, I turned off your force field. And then they just, like, destroy them. I'm sure not actually dead, but, like, it looks pretty fatal. And then Emerald Empress says, no one is here to stop us anymore. We win. But then showing up in the background is Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad. And they say, over our dead bodies, and also their dead bodies. Their many, many, many dead bodies. So, yeah. It's okay. This is part 1 of the final arc. It's called Endings Part 1. So, like, it feels big. It does feel like we have been setting this up for a while. We've been teasing at this Fatal 5 stuff. That being said, this doesn't feel like it's any different than the last, like, 4 issues. This just feels like one mega-sized arc, and this is just where we're getting to the quote-unquote final battles of it. It's not bad inherently. It just doesn't feel like it's its own special thing, you know? I'm kind of getting like a version of event fatigue, but it's specifically for just this one arc in this one book where I feel like we've been on this train for too long, and I want it to get to where it's going already. So we do have 2 more issues of this, and I can see them stretching it out that long. If we have the final issues be epilogue and the next to final issue be here's how we won the fight, or lost even, because hey, they're ending it. It could go either way. So I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it a 7. Because I'm able to follow it. And that speaks volumes to this book. Like, in fact, okay, that's unfair. For an objective thing, I'm giving it 6.5. Because to say that I can follow it and give it a 7 is just unfair to every other book. It's like, oh, if you do badly enough to start with, I'll just give you 10s as long as I can read the words on the page. So I'll give this one a 6.5, but a big contributing factor of it is that I'm kind of just happy it's ending. I'm kind of happy we're just wrapping this up, and we're focused at that. We're very focused on this specific plot in this specific place. We're all going to Earth, and I enjoy that. That's much more useful to me than 17 plots all ongoing with characters I don't know the names of. So yeah, 6.5. Legion. Animal Man number 21, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Steve Pugh and Francis Portela. So, last issue was kind of an interstitial, but it did end with the reveal that Buddy because of his role in the movie Tights, is being nominated for Best Actor. So that's a thing. And this issue picks up with this. I don't think there is a name for it, but it is Twitter, but like the alternate version for copyright reasons. And it's just a whole feed of tweets that are all like, oh, Buddy Baker, is he like, he was seen doing this, he's nominated for that, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole bunch of people both supporting and tearing him down. And the tweets continue on to the next page as we see Buddy just sitting alone is in his apartment. And then his phone goes off and turns out it's his agent, Roger. He picks up and he's like, Roger, seriously, don't want to talk right now. Roger's like, okay, I get it, but I'm calling as a friend. Maybe it's time you get out there. Maybe it's time you do anything. Literally anything. Just get back to work, maybe. Like, I'm not saying that in a sense of, get back to work like a boss, but like, take your mind off things, because you're not in a good place, Buddy. And Buddy's like, you know what? You're right. Maybe I do need to get back to work, as he eyes his Animal Man costume. And his agent's like, oh, cool, I'll set up an interview. We'll get you a haircut, get you a shave. But then he just turns off the phone and flies away as Animal Man. So then we go to Sacramento, where Maxine and her mom are staying with her grandma. And they're basically, we get the mom, I keep blanking on the name. I think it's Ellen. I could be wrong. I'm going to say Ellen. Where Ellen's just like, I can't let Maxine be around Buddy right now. Like, I know she needs her father, and like, I eventually have to deal with that, but like, I'm not okay with dealing with that right now. I can't bear to look at Buddy anymore because of what happened to Cliff. So she's going to have to be okay without seeing her dad for at least just a little while until I can manage to get there. And we see Maxine as she's supposed to be asleep, but she's talking to Socks, and she's basically saying like, I don't know why my mom's not letting me use my powers or go look for Cliff. Seems like that would be super awesome to be able to do, to just bring him back, but whatever, now I have to use my powers in secret. So Socks leads her into the land of the Red straight out of her bedroom, and she arrives wearing an Animal Man costume, which she calls herself Animal Girl. And she comes across Shepard, and Shepard's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Long time no see. And she's like, yeah, no, great. Hey, did you talk to the totems about that thing I wanted you to talk about? And he's like, sure did. They want to talk to you in person. Something you need to know, though, they're a little bit temperamental. After the whole Rot World thing, they're kind of a bit testy, so maybe don't come in there guns a-blazing. And she's just like, I don't care. They're going to help me find my brother, and they're going to like it. And everyone's just like, oh God, she's going to get killed. So we see this lady with a whole bunch of cat toys all around her. And that is something that was in the Twitter feed, was a couple mentions of pet abductions in the area. So we see this lady get a knock at her window, and it's Animal Man with the newspaper saying like, hey, newspaper says that you were the last victim who had her pets abducted. Mind you, this lady's freaking out because she's an Animal Man fan. She's like, oh my God, you're Buddy Baker. This is incredible. This is fine. He's like, yeah, no, totally great. Anyway, I want to help you find your cats. You said you had 4 of them and they were all gone. And she's like, yeah, no, totally. What do you need? He's like, just give me like a toy and I'll just do like a bloodhound thing and like track him down. And she's like, perfect. This belonged to Mr. Whisker Faces. Please help me find him. He's like, will do. And he goes to fly off. But as he's leaving, she snaps a picture and shares it on Twitter, which then we have this thing for the rest of the book where pretty much each panel has an accompanying tweet where it's either praising or bashing or just spreading rumors about Buddy. And like, does he deserve Best Actor? Is he in the area? Did he kidnap all those pets? And it's like the best representation I've seen of how stupid the internet can get very quickly. So he flies out to an industrial district, and as he arrives, he gets this screaming pain in his head of just all of these different animals, not just pets, but like gorillas and zebras and stuff, and it is driving him crazy. But first we go back into the Red, where Maxine is talking to the totems, and they're like, hey, how's it going, Maxine? We're happy to see you here again. And she's like, why didn't you bring me in sooner? I wanted to talk to you guys. And they go on this very verbose thing of like, oh, you must understand, after your father and blah, 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 and the Rot World, it's a very trustworthy time. And she's like, I didn't understand a word of what you just said. So listen up. I came here to find my brother, and I'm going to bring him back. You got a problem with that? And they're like, not really. You're going to have to, like, understand how things work around here first, because you can't just do that. So here, like, the real reason we wanted to talk to you today is that your dad made it seem like you're going to be angry with us over, like, everything that happened. And we just want to know, are you cool with still being our totem? And she's just like, if you guys want to teach me how to be Animal Girl and, like, do all that stuff and whatever, I'm fine with that. But 2 rules. 1, it has to be at night when I'm supposed to be asleep. 2, I'm going to still go looking for my brother. That is a complete non-negotiable thing. And 2.5, Socks and Shepherd are going to be my, like, buddies who are going along with me. They're going to be my pals. And the totems are like, yeah, okay, we're good with that. That's great. And she's like, great, awesome. So let's get started. Anyway, back to the buddy story. He disconnects from his powers just to shut off the screaming. And he's like, okay, well, that was messed up. Let me explore this place a little bit. And as he goes down to the basement, he sees a lab with just piles of animals that are dismembered and cut apart, and just, it is not a good time. And he hears a noise upstairs, so he runs back upstairs to check it out. And he sees this horrifying creature that seems like a patchwork of just all these different animals. And he's like, what are you doing in my factory? So fight breaks out between them. Buddy's like, oh God, what have you done, you sick bastard? The creature throws a punch at Buddy and manages to escape. And all this time, tweets are going off that are basically saying, like, oh, Buddy's in the industrial park. Oh, he's hunting down these pets. He's doing that. So they're, like, real-time doxing him. So as Buddy runs out of this warehouse, he is immediately met by an entire horde of paparazzi that are like, oh, is this just a publicity stunt for your next movie? By the way, did you abduct all those animals? How's your dead son? You know, stuff like that. That's the issue. It's a page turner. It's a good book. I was really concerned because I always heard people talking about Animal Man in the New 52 as the Rot World arc, and then nothing after that. I never hear anybody talking about what comes after that. And that's, I mean, part of the reason I did this show. But I'm happy that there's still continuing. You know, it doesn't feel like the Rot World ended and then it's just a hard cut to, and then these other stories happen. This feels like the natural progression of not only Buddy, but also Maxine and, like, Ellen and all the characters. It feels like, okay, Rot World happened, death of a son. How do we continue from there? And it feels natural, it feels good, and I'm interested on top of it because it's kind of taking the stakes back down a little bit. Like, it still feels important because everything else going on in his life right now is just kind of out of whack. So doing this tiny little thing is critical for him to be able to just be, but it's just finding missing pets, which of course, you know, it's some weirdo who's cutting up animals. So obviously it's not as simple as that, but I like that it started off as that. He didn't go looking for this huge threat to the red or whatever. It's just this tiny little finding pet story. I love that. So overall, art's great. Still very grotesque. Top notch on that. Writing, I really enjoyed it. I like the Twitter posts all throughout. It adds a little bit of extra detail to what otherwise would have just been a silent scene where he's walking through a warehouse. It's better than narration boxes of him just saying, like, I'm so upset that my son is dead. You let Twitter do that instead, and it adds this extra thing of paparazzi to it, which is great writing. Anyway, enough from me. 8.5. It's a super solid issue. It's a great part 1 to this. It's called Splinter Species arc. I'm super interested in it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we go forward. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 19th, 2013. And as I'm saying that, I now realize that it is Juneteenth. I'm recording this in advance, so it makes sense I didn't really think about it, but at the same time, it's only one day in advance. So I have off of work tomorrow, and that's just made my day so much brighter. So, hooray. Anyway, next week, DC is putting out 15 comics, and don't worry, I'm not going to do the whole thing of, 15 comics, God, why can't you balance your weeks, DC? Because that's not actually adding anything to the conversation, I now realize. However true it may be. So next week we have a varying different issue numbers that I'm not going to bother with. Batman the Dark Knight, Catwoman, Talon, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, Justice League of America, All-Star Western, Green Team, Teen Titans, and Justice League Dark. But hey, if you know how to count, you'd know that's only 13. Well, that's because next week we're getting 2 brand new number 1s. The first number 1 is Batman/Superman. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to read the slash. And Larfleeze. Now, something I need to tell you all. If you have been ignoring my 5th week episodes, how dare you? Why would you ever skip content? But regardless, you kind of need to check them out for Larfleeze, because last 5th week, which I think was episode 91, Larfleeze backup was covered, which is going to lead directly into this, so definitely worth checking out. But additionally, I've been covering the Shazam backups in all of those 5th week episodes, and the next issue of Justice League number 21, is the finale to the entire Shazam storyline. So if you go into that expecting Justice League, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because you got to catch up on your Billy Batson and whatnot. Or just watch the movie. It's literally the same plot as the movie, except Black Adam in the movie is played by Savannah. That's it. That's the only change. I don't want to spoil too much of what I'm going to get into next week, but it's the same. Anyway, that is going to do it for me. Do you have any comments on all the comics I talked about this week, next week, or any week at all? Go ahead and share them on Twitter, Discord, Patreon, any other social media. I put out this call last week, but I really do mean it. Please tell me where I can find new social media, because I am so bored with the current ones. I am open to pretty much anything, except the really, really, really hard right ones. That's a bit too far for me. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure, thumbs up, blah, blah, you know all the drill. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.